This episode of the Bari Chronicles is proudly brought to you by Bariatric Support Australia.
Hi everybody, I'm Tash.
And I'm Damien.
And we're so excited to bring you this week's episode of the Bari Chronicles. Damo, this week we want to talk about an article that has been published by the ABC on the casualties of the war on obesity.
Yeah.
I know. That word.
You know, there have been so many casualties. And
They have.
what really saddens me is even on these kinds of articles that are showing empathy and trying to educate is the cruel comments that people make.
Yep. Yeah, they do. As I have been reluctant to speak out in this particular space, probably because I did have bariatric surgery. And I felt like by speaking out and by having bariatric surgery, that I was putting myself in a position of being a hypocrite. But that is emphatically not true. I think that we are uniquely positioned to be able to speak out about the fact that the stigma is alive and well, because I know how differently I'm treated now as opposed to 100 kilos ago. The stigma is alive and well in this country.
Yeah. And I was reading an article last week, and it showed three different they were celebrities. And the article was very much two of these celebrities cheated and one lost weight naturally. And the comments on the article were just so cruel and
Vile.
And I was just thinking, who gives a fuck how they lost it?
Are we still there? Are we really still there as people where we think that it is okay to shame another human being because of the shape or size of their body? Are we still there? Is that the message we're closing out 2024, going into the year 2025, is that the message that we want to send to our young people? Is that the message that we believe that people that have a different body shape to us may be more or less valuable based on that?
Yeah.
How is that okay? This vile type of stigma must stop. It needs to end, and particularly in healthcare.
Yeah.
Now, there are some wonderful, and I do mean wonderful, clinicians in that space. There are some brilliant allied health professionals in that space, and they are champions of this movement. But it requires also us to stand up and say we do not accept stigmatizing behaviour any longer.
Yeah.
We just don't, and we won't. There should be absolutely no reason why somebody should feel frightened to go to their GP to seek help for a condition. Now, I have spoken about this before, but in my own life, prior to my bariatric surgery, I went to the doctor for numerous things over the years. It wasn't until I had a hysterectomy that we actually found out that I had endometriosis. And it wasn't until then that I realised that all of the times that I was told that my children were born prematurely because of my weight, that had just been part of the stigma that I had lived with. There have been so many things over the years, Damo, that, and I know you have a similar story, but there are so many things that I either put off seeking treatment for or was too frightened to talk about because of my size and because of the reaction that I knew I would have. I've said it before and I'll say it again. My grandmother, who was in a bigger body, she used to say to me, sweetheart, I could go to the doctor with my head hanging by a thread and he would still tell me to lose weight.
Yep.
If we don't open up the conversation to speak about weight, professionals, don't do it.
Yeah.
Or develop a relationship where it's built on trust and mutual respect so that we feel that we can open up. I'm thinking very much about a situation that I found myself in where I had hemorrhoids and I was too frightened to speak to my doctor about it. And when I finally did, he was scathing about my size, scathing about the fact that he was going to have to look at them. I knew instantly that was really what the problem was. And he actually said, if you weren't so, and I knew he wanted to say fat, if you weren't so fat, you wouldn't have this problem. Well, I've had that problem as a fat woman, and I've had that problem as the size that I am now. So I don't really think that it had anything to do with that. I think that it probably had to do with the fact that I've had 5 kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had hemorrhoids.
But even if it was to do with the fact that you were living in a bigger body, it doesn't give them the right to be an asshole about it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I know that there are people that will listen to this podcast who are sitting in their home putting up with conditions, putting up with things, putting up with pain, putting up with all sorts of things that scare the fuck out of us. But we're too frightened to go to see the doctor because we're worried about the stigma. We're worried about those comments. We're worried about the things that are going to be said.
Yeah, it'll just be fobbed off or...
Yeah, or I'll lose weight. No, do better.
Yeah, and it is unacceptable in this day and age that medical professionals have these biases. It's unacceptable. If they can't get on board with actually treating people as people, then leave the profession.
There are some of the professionals that we've had the privilege of talking to have actually helped heal trauma that I have suffered throughout my life as a child and as a teenager and as an adult that lived my life in a fat body. And it's okay for me to say that because at that time, that's what I was. It's not a bad word. Some of these amazing professionals that we've spoken with have explained things to me in a way that it has enabled me to understand that there is scientific evidence behind the fact that some of us will live our lives in bigger bodies and some of us will not.
Yeah.
There are medical drivers, there are things that cause the disease of obesity. And
some of them are happen in the first 1,000 days of life.
So we will be, of course, as we do here on the Bari Chronicles, we'll be speaking with our wonderful network of doctors, anybody that's passionate about this, to give you all the facts and the figures. We'll be dropping some podcasts where we've discussed this as well, so that you can go back and hear what authorities in this field have to say about it. But from our lived experience, I can tell you that one of the things that is a barrier to good healthcare is the thought that when you sit in that chair across from somebody that you are placing your health, but my health is in my doctor's hands in that moment. Here it is. I am giving this concern to you. And you can look at that person and treat them like a person. Or you can look at that person through bias and stigma and not get them what they need. And you know what? I think people think that they hide it well when they have stigma or when they have a bias, when they believe stigma, have a bias. But you don't. We have bullshit detectors. Like that, it's bred in when you have lived your life in a bigger body, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah,
like,
it is.
It is. You can just feel it.
There's an article here I just want to mention. It's a story in an article on the ABC website.
What's the title of the article?
The title of the article is "The Casualties of the War on Obesity," and in it we meet an amazing, brave lady named Hannah, and she was struggling with the thought of even going to her GP for help. She'd been in agony for 12 months when she finally went to her doctor. Something that she rarely does, not out of pride or stubbornness, but out of fear.
Yep.
The fear of being judged or having her pain dismissed as a byproduct of her choices. Something that would simply disappear with diet and exercise. And how many times do we hear that?
Yeah.
So Hannah fronted up.
So 12 months. 12 months.
She'd been in agony. So she fronts up to her doctor, and I will just share this so everyone can see it. He turned around, looked me up and down, and had the most disgusted look on his face, Hannah says. And he said to me, "Well, you are the 4 Fs. Fat, fertile, female, and most likely flatulent."
What an asshole. I'm sorry. If you're speaking to your patients that way, that's not good enough.
Belittling someone has never encouraged them to lose weight.
Well, I mean, it might, but you scar them. You traumatize people. Like that language traumatizes people. It frightens people. It puts fear. It puts a barrier. It makes us shut down.
And how many other people has that doctor done it to?
Who weren't in that position to be able to stand up like Hannah has. Good on you, Hannah. Thank you for being brave and sharing your story.
Yeah.
It's a story that we hear all too often in our support groups. Breaks my heart.
And it's time it stopped.
So did that go on, Damien?
So
what happened with Hannah?
Hannah says she held herself together as she dashed from the doctor's office to her car, searching desperately for a semblance of privacy. She stayed there for the next hour with tears streaming down her cheeks. Her doctor told her that with a little exercise, the gallstones would disappear. 12 months later. So this is 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. She summoned the courage to return to a different GP who immediately sent her for surgery where her gallbladder was removed.
So for 2 years, Hannah suffered. For 2 years, she was frightened and had been fat-shamed and experienced weight bias in her treatment, which caused her to not seek treatment for something that's excruciating. I don't know if you've ever had your gallbladder decide that it is no longer working. I have had that. And oh my goodness, the pain of that. I've had 5 kids and I still maintain that the pain of gallbladder was worse than having no children. And Hannah put up with that for 2 years. That should have been a very straightforward.
And that's not a rare case.
No.
That is not well, maybe the doctor was just having a bad day. Yeah, and I hate that when people gaslight and say, oh, maybe this person was having a bad day. No, maybe they were being an asshole.
Yeah, we get it. We all have bad days. We understand that. We do get it. I mean, I have bad days. I have grace for the bad days because I know I have bad days. But there's a difference between having a bad day and just having a bad attitude.
And you know what? Sometimes if you're having a bad day, go home.
Or, yeah, just think about that person. Think about what they've gone through. And allow that to be I understand, I get it, that it's a clinical diagnosis. I understand that. But as people, we have feelings.
Yeah.
And that needs to be acknowledged. There's things that we certainly wouldn't say, to some people. And we know that it's unacceptable. Well, don't make weight bias comments to people that are in bigger bodies because it literally can become that barrier. It needs to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. We had someone staying with us the last couple of nights, and a relative, and he was telling me about his daughter who was taken into ICU and needed an injection into her tummy. And there was comments made about that and how big she was. There was comments made that she needed 10 milligrams instead of the 5 milligram injection because, it's because you're too fat, 5 milligrams won't work. That was the words that we used to someone that was in ICU.
Also someone that is in the medical profession.
As someone that we care about. This isn't just random stories that we hear. This has happened to us personally. I had lost 50 kilos and went to my GP for some scripts and he sent me into the nurse to get weighed because we were tracking that at that time. And the nurse turned around and said to me, have you considered coming to our weight loss clinic? You could clearly lose some weight. And I just lost 50 kilos. The damage that does to someone. I didn't go back to that clinic. Thankfully, I was able to get into another clinic, but I didn't go back there because I was humiliated. And this wasn't said in a private little office one-on-one.
Yes, and let's also, I'll just jump in there and say that that's a clinic that you've been going to for how long?
My whole life.
Yeah.
So I was, 34 years old when this happened. I had been going to that clinic for 34 years. And this person says that. And I never went back. I mean, the doctor that was there that birthed me was still working at that clinic as a GP and one of the principal owners of the clinic. And they were still happy to treat people like that and do nothing about it when a complaint was made. And that's just my story. Tash has many horror stories of her own. Our younger sister has horror stories. Thankfully, one that happened to her, the person was sent back for retraining, which
Yes, that was that, and that was fairly recently. That was actually fairly recently, and unfortunately, the hospital involved tried to cover it up and didn't want to provide details of the person that had been involved.
Yeah. Yeah, well, whenever there are professionals treating people like that and the organisations they're working for cover it up, we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, do.
Yes, we've made some great strides, but only with people that are actually directly working in those fields.
Mm.
It is only a handful, and we are so grateful for that handful.
Yeah, we're grateful. We love that handful.
But more of us need to stand up and say enough. More of us need to draw that line and call it out when they hear it or when they see it.
When it was our little sister, I can't even begin to say how devastated I was, how heartbroken I was for her. Because when you know somebody and you love somebody, you know their journey, you know what they've been through, the things that have been said to them, you understand all of those things, and then someone that's in the medical profession just does what was done in that situation. It was heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking. And then when we tried to find the person's name, to know that it wouldn't be given to us, well, you better believe we found it anyway. It's just not good enough. It is not good enough. And we really hope that in the days and years ahead, that people can just be treated fairly and well, the same regardless.
Mm.
That's all we're asking for, isn't it, Damo?
Yeah, we're not asking for special treatment. We're not asking for, things to not be addressed if they need to be. But we can do better. We can be kind in the way we deliver these things.
Like hot tip, telling somebody that's in a bigger body that they're fat, they already know. You don't need to say it. They already know. And if they want to talk to you about it, then be that person that they feel comfortable enough to open up to.
I mean, if you're going to a doctor about whatever it may be, if it is something that a person living in a smaller body, however you want to measure that, whether it's BMI or whatever, if it's a person living
That's a bullshit thing.
a regular, with no obesity issues, if they can get it, then don't blame the obesity on the person that's in the bigger body. Actually treat the condition that they're going to see you about. I remember my first time in hospital, and it was for my appendix. And I remember lying there, and this young man, he was, I don't know, mid-30s, I guess, he'd been brought in because he had a heart attack while he was doing a marathon.
Yes.
He was fit, healthy, well, thought he was healthy, but he had a heart attack. These things can happen to people regardless of whether they're 200 kilos or 60 kilos. It's not always obesity related. And I think that's where a lot of patients, they just want to be treated fairly and not have everything put back and have their weight blamed for everything that they're going through.
Sometimes it's just the mental load of going through life in a bigger body is enough on its own. Like, we are, well, I know I was treated differently because I have both experiences. So I can say, I can pinpoint the point at which I started to be treated differently, like the weight point. I know what it's like.
And hot tip, we can hear through the curtains.
Yeah, we can. The curtain is not soundproof. Even the closed door. Some of you guys got big voices, big loud voice. Everyone hears. Everyone knows.
And we understand everyone needs to talk to each other
Yeah, we
and
get
work out,
Totally get it.
you know, but we can hear through the curtains.
I mean, I just recently, when with everything that Mum's gone through, there are a couple of times where there were a few references to weight made, and me, well, quite happy to say, could we just not talk like that, please? We can hear you.
And I look so horrified. You know,
Our weight bias is hanging out.
and you tuck that back in.
We probably sound really feisty. I know I sound feisty. This particular subject,
It just pisses me off.
yeah, I think when you've lived it for as long as we did, and you know what? Like even now, if I go out wearing shorts, like it's summer in Australia, it's hot as balls most of the time. If I go out wearing shorts, you can bet your life that someone is going to make a comment about my skin. Or do the, oh, look at that, pointy, looky thing as well. Yeah. Not all bodies look the same. Not all bodies are the same size. We could just accept that and move on. That would be great. That would be awesome.
See, and it shows what society is like when, if someone goes out and they're living in a bigger body and, you have times where people make comments and can be such assholes. Then you go ahead and you lose all that weight and you go out and then they comment because you've got all this excess skin. It's like, just stop being an asshole.
Just stop it. Like, at some point, it becomes about people just being prejudiced.
Yeah.
And judgmental.
It does. Yeah, I've sort of been umming and ahhing about talking about it too much, but I've been going through some stuff lately because I've got teeth that are broken and decayed and rotting, and you probably noticed me clearing my throat a bit. Last night I had a run-in with my reflux, and it burnt the heck out of my throat. And when that goes up into your mouth, your teeth aren't sort of designed to handle acid too well.
Yeah, cope with your stomach acid.
And so I have a lot of dental problems. And, I get comments about that. And
do you have the 60 grand to
fix it?
To fix it?
I went to the dentist thinking, well, we could just do the top because it's only my top teeth that are troubling. Except for the fact that when they did the X-ray, the way my top jaw is, they would have to do my bottom teeth as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to eat properly or anything like that. So $60,000 was the quote. Not many of us have that just sitting there. So it's something that we have to, there are other options, and we're looking into all of them, but that takes time. People are in the bodies that they're in, and they may not want to be in that body, but it's the body that they have.
Be kind.
So be kind,
Be kind to them. Just be kind. Be kind to people.
Stop and listen to their story.
Find out where they're at. It's really disheartening when you have lived your life in a bigger body and you experience all of that, and then in my case I had bariatric surgery. Not so that all of that would stop. I had bariatric surgery so that the health conditions that I was experiencing would hopefully go into remission.
Yeah.
And as the weight came off, I noticed I was being treated differently. And that was a whole mind screw all of its own. And then when my weight didn't sort of just stop where everyone thought it was and it kept going, and
you copped it for being too small.
Then I copped it for being too small. What sort of role model are you? Now you're too thin. It's too big. Now I was too small. And then I was too wrinkly and crinkly. So my message is to learn to just advocate for yourself. Learn to love yourself enough and find enough worth and value in yourself to be able to speak up. Yeah. And hopefully then we learn enough worth and value in ourselves to feel confident enough to speak up for others.
Guys, have a great week.
Sorry, it hasn't been a joyful one, but you know what?
It's necessary.
It is necessary. It's necessary. We are thankful for the Hannahs of this world, for everybody that spoke up in that article, for everyone that is speaking up on this topic. We thank you so much.
Dr. Terry Lynn, who was
Dr. Terry Lynn
quoted
yep.
in that article, and Dr. Alex Craven, who's done a follow-up interview with the ABC. Yeah, there are so many amazing people, and all the other people that were involved in it.
In that article as well.
They're just the ones that I can remember. But even to the journalist.
Yeah, thank you for casting the light onto this topic, because it needs to be talked about. It needs to be discussed. It really does. There is a growing discontent with weight bias and stigma. Look up the Weight Issues Network. We love their work as well.
Weight Issues Network. They're amazing with the patient-facing issues
and advocacy.
And then there's the awesome, amazing people at the Obesity Collective. And they're the ones that are speaking to the doctors and the health professionals and that side of it. Look them up.
Yeah, look them up. Become involved. Nothing changes unless we start to make a bit of noise. Thank you. What do you think?